Hello, everyone. We are back. We are live with my friend Deb Roth. And I'm so excited to introduce you to her if you don't already know her. And if you do, you might learn a few extra things about her. That's what I love the most about these stories of extraordinary women making extraordinary moves. Often the women are telling us that as before the interview, and they really have to stop and think about what is an extraordinary move I made? Or am I really extraordinary? And these are the questions that we're bringing up inside of this community because it's really important for us to celebrate and witness ourselves so that other people can actually do the same. So, welcome, Deb. It's so great to see you here today.
Wonderful to be with you, Debbie. Definitely.
Okay. Deb, tell us a little bit about yourself, starting on where you're coming in from, because this is a global community.
Yeah. I am in New York City. Have been here for, oh my gosh, 45 years, something like that. Moved here right out of college and really love it. I mean, as many people consider it an extraordinary thing to be living in this iconic city, and in some ways it really has, raising our two boys there um and I've just so many little and big things. I'm a coach. I work with people who are in transition. Love doing women's empowerment stuff. I'm an interfaith minister. My master's thesis was on the power of transformative ritual and feminist psychology and women's spirituality. So all that gets woven together in all the things that I do.
And I
And I love
really
it.
want to say that you're a trailblazer because a lot of the things that you've been doing them way before they were mainstream. In fact, maybe a little bit out there.
That is putting it nicely. I was in the corporate world, for, I don't know, 10, 12 years, whatever it was, for a while, 13 years, I think, altogether. And then I left and actually was able to work part-time for a couple years in the late 80s. And that was my goal. I wanted to be able to do something that I could spend more time with our then little boys. Um, and I went with a friend to her tarot reading and was blown away by what this wonderful woman told her, and ended up doing the same thing with this woman. And she turned me on to the place that I got my master's degree. Back then, think about this, like by then it was like the mid 90s. It was an independent study master's degree. Now we call it distance learning, and it's all over the place. But it allowed me to really create what I wanted to create. And, I think we've all had those pivotal moments. And I've been thinking about this extraordinary experience question, Debbie, that some of them are little ones and some of them are like big life-changing ones. I mean, when we talk about pivotal moments, I think we think about the big life-changing ones, but they can happen in quiet moments too. And, going with that friend, walking into my Unitarian church for the first time, there were a whole bunch of things that happened, little things, little extraordinary things that, when woven together, really set me on this path that, I mean, I used to joke that here I am, this white bread, Protestant upstate New York girl. And I used to, when people would ask me what I was doing in the 90s, when I was, researching and studying all these ancient symbol systems and exploring feminist psychology and spirituality, I'd feel this need to make sure that they didn't think I was too weird. And so I would be very self-effacing, and I'd roll my eyes and I'd call it the weird stuff. And, God forbid, they didn't take me seriously. And then another one of those ordinary moments where I didn't plan it, but some group asked me at an end of season soccer potluck, so in this case, all the kids, little boys mostly, were in the other room playing videos or something. And I was talking with the parents, and I found myself describing what I do just kind of matter of factly. And rather than focusing on usually it was like a third of the people whose eyes would kind of glaze over, and they'd say, I could hear them saying, "Who's this nutcase, doing all this woo-woo stuff." instead of getting derailed by them, it wasn't making them wrong. It was just, that's okay. That's where we're at. And then there was the group that was like, oh, wow, I just went to my first women's circle. And then there was a group that was like, ooh, that's kind of cool. Tell me more. And it was that little moment was ended up that, or what I talk about in my circles. I always end my circles with inviting women to return to their ordinary lives, extraordinarily deepened, empowered, whatever the theme of the circle was. So that juxtaposition of seemingly, you know, little ordinary moments can turn into something really extraordinary.
Wow. Wow. This is such a great conversation because for me, it brings in two things, or maybe more than two things, but right off the hop, I'm like, so many coaches are trying to fit in instead of stand out. And I'm like just celebrating somebody that has that courage and takes that step forward or knows who they are in such a deep belief that they embody it and they step up and they loudly, proudly say, this is who I serve. This is what I do. This is why I'm here. And so when I see you, and I think that it's quite hilarious and makes sense that to look at you and maybe to even be in your world with two boys and a normal household and all of this stuff, and then you're like, and you do what? You speak on what?
Right.
Now this intrigues me. But there had to been, like you said, there was a little bit of like you made fun of it yourself, even though you knew you were being drawn and called to do this.
Yeah.
Can you remember a time where you actually walked away feeling not so extraordinary because somebody made you feel a certain way, or maybe a story in your own mind told you something?
I think that still happens. And I call it being a singer. I sing in women's choruses and I chant, all kinds of wonderful goddess chants. And so voice and vibration means a lot to me. I think to be able to, I interrupted myself. So different octaves of this issue come up for me. And there are moments where I felt like I couldn't be my whole self. And not that, as one of my early coaches said, the real wise woman, you don't have to share everything with everybody. And that doesn't mean that you're disempowering yourself,
Sure.
but it's okay to choose your audience.
Mm.
And there are definitely, I mean, I I know there's probably countless, which is why I can't come up with thinking of one where that deeper octave is, oh, there's that gremlin, that self-limiting belief that has me worrying about what other people are thinking, and I back away. And to think that we're always, once we reach the point where we're doing what we love and we've overcome all these obstacles and we're feeling extraordinary, guess what? You're always going to be tested. There's always going to be different octaves, which I think make us, broader. They expand our being, mentally, physically, emotionally, and spiritually. So yeah, I think there's there's probably too many specific.
No, that was a great answer because I think that what you said there is when we talk about extraordinary women making extraordinary moves, we sometimes put somebody up on a pedestal. This, like, oh my goodness, bow down to her, like, look at all that she's done. And I am here to show and prove and build possibility that we have extraordinary moves in each and every one of us. It's when we're intentionally choosing them. And so then that one moment where you're like, in a different group, you may speak about this or you may speak about that. There is times when we are being guided on to say something. Like I'll get that whisper in my ear and I'll be like, no, not in this group. Don't make me say that in this group. And then
Right.
you say it and somebody's like, oh my, I didn't know. I thought I was all alone. I thought I was so weird or I was so different. And
Right.
there is other times where we're being guided that you wouldn't be appreciated anyway. And so it's really going to spiral you downwards. So why even bother having that conversation, right?
Well, definitely. And I think you kind of sparked for me, Debbie, this idea too that of how important it is to have your beloved communities, to have your peeps, to have those that are on your wavelength, or even if they're not completely, they at least support you where you're at. And I did a talk last month. It's been a long time since I've done a live, and I'm, do Zoom stuff and all that stuff. And I officiate weddings, so I'm up in front of people, so I'm comfortable in front of people. But I did, and I think I told you this, or you heard it through our various grapevines. I did a talk last month for this now you know they're going to be my peeps, even though I only knew the two people that invited me, the president of this organization, the Metaphysical Center of New Jersey. And I did an hour talking about positive intelligence, PQ, and then a break, and then talked about joy intelligence, JQ. And how delicious to be in an environment where I definitely was not the weirdest person in the room. And they loved it. And that was so, so affirming. And I think we need that as much as we need to be stretched and nudged a little beyond our comfort zones, to reach the people that are like that middle group that I was talking about.
Yeah.
The people that are curious but don't know quite where to go. I love working and playing and talking with people like that to help them reach their extraordinariness.
Exactly. I can definitely think of times when I was that middle person, not even aware that there was something out there that I was craving or wishing
You
for.
can't even
And then
name
when
it.
you get
Yeah.
introduced to it, you're like, how did I not know this? And
Right.
thank you for bringing this forward and letting my curiosity build. Oh,
Definitely.
let's circle back into some of the things you just spoke about, IQ and JQ, but this
PQ.
PQ,
PQ.
sorry, I knew that I said it wrong. But you bring so much science and so much research. It really matters to you. So I feel like you're such a bridge for people. You're such a bridge to help people understand in simple terms. So can you just share a little bit about any of that? Why
Oh,
interests you?
well,
You
I
geek
mean, I
out on?
shared with you my story. That goes back to my self-doubting, self-demeaning days where I really needed, and we sure didn't have the neuroscience back then that we have now. And I was constantly looking. That's where I got a master's. I knew whatever kind of coaching I was going to do as an interfaith minister using symbol systems like astrology and tarot. And I studied palmistry, the same woman who turned me on, to tarot and got me in touch with her master's program through Lesley University in Boston. It was no slouchy place. I mean, it's quite an extraordinary, place. And so even then, I thought, okay, I have to be certified as a coach. I'm going to get my master's. And what was so cool, and I really just recommend it to anybody who's on that place of, you know, how do I wanted credentials. But my master's program it was a master's in psychology. What did I call it? It was a master's in psychology, specializing in transpersonal psychology and feminist spirituality. And so I got to bring in all the lovely, wonderful, now I can say woo woo with great pride and not as a demeaning thing, but all the things I loved most. And my master's thesis was weaving a path to wholeness through women's ritual and the four elements. It was that urge, to find scientific stuff, that's a real scientific word, right? It stays with me. And I just love seeing how now there's neuroscience that brings together all of this out of the box kind of stuff and showing the benefits of it.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm just sitting here in awe and wonder because, even 10 years ago, we couldn't have had a conversation that we could have privately,
Right.
but that anyone would have cared about because they would have just not been able to hear it. And so
Yes.
what I say is that, as we raise our vibration, we become more magnetic. And then when we become more magnetic, it's like people's ears and eyes open up and they be able to see and hear and know, even if it's a spark. There's
Exactly.
something there that opens up for them. And really that's what we're here doing inside of the Be Extraordinary Women's Network is sparking interest and
Exactly.
curiosity. And it's so fun. So I would love, oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, no, and that sparked, I love talking with you. We always like bounce off each other in such delicious ways. Um, I think what I, even if you don't know what's next, especially if you don't know what's next, if you do affirmations, if you have a spiritual practice, to just reach out to whoever, whoever, whatever your highest, wisest self, God, goddess, all that is, whatever you want to call it, and ask for clarity,
Mm.
ask for to be held as you do your exploration. And you can define. When I was looking years ago, when I was trying to figure out what was next as I was slowly moving out of corporate stuff, I still to this day remember my affirmation. I have interesting, challenging part-time work that pays well and gives me more time with the boys. And so you don't have to nail it. You don't have to, and like you said, it's being open to those sparks. When I walked into that Unitarian church and the minister there at that point, 35 years ago, whatever it was he was very connected with the divine feminine, with the goddess archetypes. And it was like, that was one of those moments like, oh my gosh, that's what's been missing for me. And that talk about setting up my trajectory. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So yeah, we are definitely feeding off each other because you actually answered the question that I was going to ask.
Oh,
And
good.
I'll just give another opportunity in case there's something else, because there is women both live with us now and maybe somebody that comes in 5 years from now and finds this group and they really think that they're ordinary. There's nothing gifted about them. They don't see extraordinary in them today or even in their future. What would you say to them?
Oh, that's such a great question. Um, to just let yourself be open. I think I learned this, interestingly enough, I learned this as I was transitioning out of corporate stuff. I'd gotten my master's, but one of the and a dear friend, she's still one of my soul sisters, was the VP at an outplacement firm, a career transition firm. And so I had to do it wasn't PowerPoint, it was overheads and all that at that point. But I would, of course, very slowly and carefully, because, I would weave in stuff about myself. And one of the things that came out of, of the corporate part of it was that you don't or can't necessarily always acknowledge or see what your strengths are. It's and so I often ask, and part of my intake, what do other people say that you're good at?
Yeah.
How do other people say that you're unique? And again, doing the group thing around that, like as a for instance, when I've done my moon circles, as you know, for 28 years, and now just doing them virtually. And on the Aquarius new moon, which is coming up, we always do some version of how do you honor your unique self? What are your unique magical qualities? And women can come to a circle like that, and like you said, and say, I don't have anything special and different. But then as people start to go around and acknowledge even the littlest, sweetest things, I am an amazing caretaker. Name it. And I think hearing other women talk about what makes them extraordinary then triggers, even if you think you're not. I think triggers a lot. It is so supportive of us. I mean, that's one of the juicy things about women's circles.
It is. And I don't know if everybody that's watching this even knows what a women's circle is. Please reach out to Deb. She has them and they are by donation, and there's many a beautiful experience it. Because for me, like you talk about being juicy, being expansive, being
Right.
open to possibilities. It is like, to me, you can go into something and feel quite stuck or frustrated or confused, and just be open. And the energy in that room and the way that they're facilitated, it's just like, wow, I got my aha moment. Everything just shifted for me. And
Yeah.
now I'm this different person. And there's a evolution to that
Yes.
I didn't know a woman's circle existed. If I would
Right.
have thought about a woman's circle before I actually got introduced to him, I would have thought
Right.
it was a gossip circle. And it was
Right.
completely two different things, completely.
Well, and I think there's organized things like that, like my new moon circles. But then I was having a freak out day on Monday. Here's a good example. As you know, I'm having hip replacement surgery on January 6th. And I'm, I'm a pretty positive person. And I made the big mistake of connecting with Dr. Google and and asking all these questions. How my recovery, and when can I do my yoga and my Pilates and my bar, which I do every day. I do one of them every day, and just making myself crazy. And talked to a couple for not so no formal circle here. I mean, the next day we were winding down a wonderful circle of coaches. We've been going for 15 years, and we just, for all kinds of fine, wonderful reasons, it was our last one. Just by talking about my craziness and letting these special people just hold space for me and my ranting, I got all kinds of great, ideas. They helped settle me and ground me. But then I had some very specific resources. A great book about preparing for surgery, and another book that's meditations and affirmations that you can listen to. And so it doesn't have to be a formal circle. Of course, anybody here, I'd love to have you at one of our circles, but isolation is deadly. To be or do our best, we need to be in community. We need to have what I call beloved communities.
Mhm.
And that, that can take a little effort, even if you're not doing something as formal as a women's circle. You still you need to connect, even if you've got just a best friend. What's tricky is that the catch-22 is that when you're having a day like that, you just can't even think about reaching out to anyone, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of not a good thing that our human psyches do to us.
It is so true. I actually had a real bonus day yesterday. It was just one of these lovely days, and I got to be in an intimate mastermind with Joseph McClendon III. Now, he's been with Tony Robbins and many of the speakers forever, and he has a neuro encoding academy where he teaches this stuff.
Wow.
And he has geeked out for years and created his own system of really understanding our thoughts, our emotions, our body, and why it does all these things. But he said the thing about, he's like, I don't believe in manifesting as in just like affirmation believing. And we all have a system that works. So I'm not saying that if your system works, don't go change it. But the thing that spoke to me is that he said that fear will derail you every time. And it only takes a second of fear to take you out of that attraction magnetic state in which your audience is paying you, whether you're being invited to speak on a stage, whether you're in this empowered self. And when you come out of it, it's not a matter of if you will, because you will, fear will come in. How quickly can you get back into that state where
Right.
I call it tuning the radio, where you're like everything's in flow and it's just perfect again. And
Yeah.
when you talked about that Monday, you have community, you had a support system, you had resources in which you could go to. And probably most times you can pull yourself out of that state.
Right.
But there is times, and I definitely know my triggers. There is times that if I didn't have a community of people to help me, I
Yeah.
would spiral in a
Yeah.
bad way. So,
Yeah. I've always loved that acronym. There's probably other ones too, but fear is false evidence appearing real.
oh,
And to remind ourselves that that's the way our brain works too. And that's, thank God for all the neuroscientific stuff that's come down the pike, that we really can. And that's what positive intelligence is about, PQ. It's about literally changing those neural pathways. And so much of it, and actually this is a good thing to bring in. So much of it is getting out of our heads, the hamster wheel in our heads, and into our bodies somehow.
yeah,
And with PQ, they have what they call PQ reps. So when you feel yourself being hijacked, you rub your hands together, or you sit and focus on your breathing, or you sit and listen for the farthest away song or the closest sound. Song's nice too. or visual, so literally, and that's one of the things I've always loved about ritual, because it is to create sacred space, to access our deepest unconscious. You can do that through, you know, any of the five senses, and each one is evocative, in a different way. Smell probably being the most evocative one. If you think about the smells, if you smell a campfire, does it take you back to summer camp? Does it bring you to a bonfire, out in your beautiful fields? Because our sense of smell is directly connected to the limbic system, which is the seat of all of our memories and emotions. So anyway,
No, I geek out on this, so I'm like, yes, yes, yes.
but I think so. That's interesting. If there's a single action that might someone, when they're feeling in that even less than ordinary place, forget about feeling even, ordinary, and to move to extraordinary, do something embodied, dance. I've started dancing just in my office, a whole lot more, particularly because I always have music going on in the background. And when different songs come on, I'll just get up and I'll just start moving. And we do that during our women's circles, even when we're online, because, and I think that's so especially, I know we have, do we have men? Are there men in the, no, I think this is a women's.
This is women's only, this one, yeah.
Well, more than anything else, because of the way that women's bodies have been objectified and worse over the millennia, forget about recently. It's so important for us to claim the wisdom and the beauty and the strength and the power of our bodies. And so dance. If you can't do anything else and you want to feel extraordinary, dance.
Wow. We could have conversations for weeks at a time and never get to the end of what we are so passionate about.
Yeah.
It's being whispered in my ear, so I'm going to bring it up. I believe that in many countries, music and dance and celebration is so much more normal.
Yeah.
And they may not be rich, but they are abundant, and they really do embody all of that. And I think that we are coming back to that, because what you said is get up in your house or your office and dance. And I'm like, again, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, it'd be like, she's gone loony. Now we totally get it, because it does change your thought patterns. It changes how you feel about yourself. Definitely, if other people are around, it's contagious, right?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Love it. So as we're closing this off, I would love for you to tell us of one extraordinary move or something that you're celebrating and sharing with us today that really says, I am Deborah Roth and I am extraordinary.
Oh my goodness. That's a big question. It probably has to do something, and this is kind of weaving together just about everything we've talked about. The shift that I talked about on Monday, and that's around my relationship with my body, and for the first 33 years of my life, I was pretty active, ran marathons, got Lyme disease, ended up with something they call Lyme arthritis, which I've had for the last 36 years. So after the hip will come the knee within the year, hopefully within about 6 months. And I think so I feel like so much of my consciousness and subconscious, because I'm certainly dreaming about all this stuff too, is around my relationship with my body right now. And one of the ways that I feel like I've reclaimed that in this extraordinary way, which made me sad to realize that because I hadn't been doing my women's circles live, I was not really dancing on a regular basis, just, free form dancing. So I don't know if this is a great example, but it just feels like, for me, it feels, and I guess that's the most important thing, right? That for me, it feels like this extraordinary awareness and reclaiming of the strength and beauty and wisdom of my body. And that I am now, it's going to be tough getting through this next year. And as my surgeon says, he said, this is going to be really hard on you, but the only thing you can do in the first month is to putter. Don't do anything else, binge watch. But after that, that's a new legacy for my body. I mean, my body will be in a different place than it's been for 35 years. So that feels extraordinary. And who I'll be, I'm so curious to see,
Oh my
what will
goodness.
come up as a result of that.
This is beautiful. I love this example and that curiosity state that really we've through this entire conversation of who will I be? Right?
Yeah.
Is there even another version of myself that I haven't met yet? And what is
Right.
that going to look like? Maybe I'm going to learn more things. Maybe I'm going to start teaching dance. Like whatever it is, like let's
Right.
just embrace it.
Yeah. Yep.
Wow. Thank you, Deb, for coming and
Oh, thank you,
with us
Debbie.
today.
This has been delightful.
It is always delightful having
Yes.
conversations with you. Deb, is there any way that you would like to invite people to reach out to you? I know that we talked about the women's circle. Is
Yeah.
there something that you would like to invite them to?
Um, well, there's the most immediate thing. I also that those happen on the new moon, and the next new moon is on December 30th. You can go to my website, which is spiritedliving.com, and all of that is there. Spirit with an ED living.com. But then on Monday, well, actually it's Sunday, but I don't do my meditations on the weekends. On Monday, I'm doing my 15-minute full moon telemeditation. It's on the phone. It's not on Zoom. We don't need to look at each other when we're meditating. Um, and this is a good reminder. I'm just about to post that on my Spirited Living with Deborah Roth Facebook page.
Perfect. Perfect. Well, we
That's on my
know that
website
when
too.
we're on Facebook, we can click on there, find
Yes.
her other ways, be a bit of a detective, but we'll also drop some links in here so that you can connect. If this is resonating with you, you can't meet a better person to be connected with than Deb Roth. Thank you so much.
Back at you, my dear. Thanks so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye.